Instructor Vrax Kalnorian had broken 412 recruits in his career, and he kept count the way other people kept trophies. He was a Satari War veteran with 3 scars, 2 medals, and 1 permanently disappointed expression, and his reputation preceded him across the entire compact training fleet like a bad smell you couldn't quite place until you were standing in it. He did not like humans. This was not a secret. He announced it, usually before breakfast, the way some people announce the weather. Soft, he would say, pacing the training deck with his hands clasped behind his back like a disapproving grandfather inspecting a garden that had failed to grow anything useful. Pink. Slow. No exoskeleton. No venom glands. No claws worth mentioning. And somehow they conquered fire before they figured out shoes. I do not understand how this species survived its own childhood. So when command assigned him a human recruit named Desmond Okafor, Vrax filed a formal complaint. It was denied. He filed a second one. Also denied. By the third complaint, the fleet administrator had simply stopped responding, which Vrax chose to interpret as tacit agreement that he was right and everyone else was wrong. Desmond, for his part, did not seem to notice he was disliked. Or if he noticed, he found it funny, which was somehow worse. "You can call me Des," he said on his first day, extending a hand that Vrax did not shake. "Everyone does. Well, everyone who likes me. You can call me Recruit Okafor if that makes you feel better about yourself." Vrax stared at him for a long moment, the way one stares at a stain that has appeared on a previously clean surface for no discernible reason. "I do not require your permission to address you however I choose," Vrax said. "Cool. Noted. Anyway, where do I put my bag?" This was Des. Slouchy. Unbothered. Perpetually amused by something no one else could see. He had a build that suggested he skipped leg day with the same enthusiasm most people reserved for skipping taxes, and a smile that made instructors want to reassign him to latrine duty on principle alone. Vrax hated him immediately and completely, the way you hate a song that gets stuck in your head after only one listen. The squad Des landed in was, in Vrax's professional opinion, a collection of God's rough drafts. There was Thrylus, an insectoid recruit from the Chiv hive who twitched every time someone raised their voice and apologized to inanimate objects when she bumped into them. There was Gorham, a Threxian built like a geological formation, all rock-plated muscle and the emotional range of a boulder, which was to say, occasionally he rolled over and crushed something. And there was Islith, an avian officer in training with iridescent feathers, a superiority complex the size of a moon, and a private conviction that humanity's presence in the compact was an administrative error that would eventually be corrected. "You're the human," Islith said, looking Des up and down with the enthusiasm of someone examining expired produce. "I've heard about your species. No natural armor. No venom. You sweat when you're stressed. It's revolting." "Yeah, we're basically walking salt licks with anxiety," Des said cheerfully. "It's our brand." Thrylus made a small nervous clicking sound that might have been a laugh. Gorham did not react, because Gorham rarely reacted to anything that wasn't trying to kill him. Training began the next morning, and it went, by every available metric, badly. Vrax paired the recruits off for sparring, and when Des squared up against Gorham, 400 kilograms of Threxian muscle and mineral plating, the fight lasted, charitably, 11 seconds. Des went down like a folding chair at a bad party, hit the mat, and lay there for a moment before giving a thumbs up to no one in particular. 10 out of 10, would get flattened again, he announced to the ceiling. Vrax stood over him, arms crossed, radiating the specific disappointment of a man watching his tax dollars evaporate. That was pathetic. "Thank you, I try. That is not a thing to be proud of. I contain multitudes, Instructor." It went on like this for 2 weeks. Des lost to everyone. He lost to Gorham, who could have benched a small vehicle. He lost to Thrylus, who apologized mid-strike out of habit. He even lost to Islith, who spent the entire fight narrating his failures aloud like a smug sports commentator. Every loss came with a joke, a shrug, or some baffling human idiom that translated poorly through the universal comm implants. "Well, that's the ballgame," he said once, after being thrown across the mat by a recruit half his size, and nobody, including the translation matrix, had any idea what a ballgame was or why losing resembled one. Vrax began to suspect, somewhere in the back of his considerable and battle-hardened brain, that something was off. It wasn't the losing that bothered him. Recruits lost. That was the point of training. What bothered him was how Des lost. There was no panic in it. No genuine effort, either, now that Vrax actually watched instead of simply seething. Des moved like a man conserving energy for something else entirely, absorbing hits with the mild irritation of someone stepping in a puddle rather than the alarm of someone being nearly killed. But Vrax was proud, and pride does not enjoy being told it might be missing something. So he did what proud people do. He got louder. "Humans," he announced to the assembled recruits, 3 weeks into training, in front of 2 visiting members of Compact High Command who had come to observe the fleet's newest specimens, "are the weakest combat asset this compact has ever conscripted. No claws. No armor. No venom. Their greatest historical achievement, as far as I can tell, was inventing spicy food and immediately regretting it." The observers, a pair of stern Voranic officials with faces like carved granite, watched with polite, professional disinterest. Des, seated at the back with his arms folded, raised a hand. "Permission to disagree, sir." "Denied." "Sit down." "Just going to disagree quietly, then." Vrax's patience, never a deep well to begin with, hit the bottom with an audible thud. He stalked over, jabbed a clawed finger toward the sparring ring, and said the sentence that would, unbeknownst to him, end his winning streak of insufferable smugness forever. "Fine. You disagree so much, Recruit Okafor? Prove it. Live simulation. Full parameters. And this time, stop holding back." The room went quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet right before something extremely stupid or extremely memorable happens. Des tilted his head. "You sure about that? I am giving you a direct order." "I mean, I'll do it, obviously, I'm just saying, are you sure?" "Like, sure. Are you stalling, human?" "No, I'm just, okay. Third time's the charm." "You're positive?" "Full parameters, no holding back, that's the official order, on record, in front of the nice granite-faced observers?" Vrax's mandibles clicked with irritation. "Yes. Now stop wasting my time and get in the ring before I lose what remains of my patience." Des stood, cracked his neck, and rolled his shoulders with the casual finality of a man closing a laptop before a long trip. "All right," he said. "Your funeral. Metaphorically. Simulation, so, you know, not literally. Probably." The training deck reconfigured itself around them, holographic terrain shimmering into existence, a mock urban battlefield, collapsed structures, artificial smoke drifting between broken pillars. The observers leaned forward, mildly interested for the first time all day. Thryllis chewed on one of her own mandible plates with anxious energy. Gorham, for once, actually looked like he was paying attention. Islith smirked, already composing the joke she planned to make afterward. Vrax charged in first, because Vrax always charged in first. It was, in his defense, a strategy that had worked for him roughly 412 times. It did not work the 413th time. The moment the simulation's live fire klaxon sounded, something in Des changed. It wasn't visible in any single obvious way, no glowing eyes, no dramatic transformation, nothing a lesser narrator might reach for to make the moment feel bigger than it needed to be. It was smaller than that, and somehow far more unsettling. The looseness left his shoulders. The permanent, faintly amused expression didn't vanish so much as sharpen into something colder, more focused, the look of a man doing long division in his head while somebody screamed at him. Vrax's opening strike, a full-force lunge that had ended sparring matches in a single hit for 3 years running, connected with nothing but empty air, because Dez was no longer where he had been half a second earlier. He wasn't fast in the flashy, cinematic sense. He was fast in the sense that he had already read the strike before it started, adjusted, and was now standing exactly where he needed to be to make Vrax regret his life choices. "Cute," Dez said, and it was the same voice, the same drawl, but it landed differently now, less like a joke and more like a verdict. Vrax spun, recalibrated, tried a secondary attack pattern, a feint into a low sweep that had never once failed him. Dez read the feint like a man reading a menu he'd already memorized, stepped inside the sweep instead of away from it, and put him on the ground with an economy of motion that suggested effort had never really been the issue. It had simply never been necessary before. "You," Vrax started, scrambling upright. "Was holding back?" Dez offered. "Yeah. You mentioned that. 3 times, actually, if we're counting, and I like counting." What followed was not, by any generous definition, a fair fight. Vrax was a decorated veteran of 2 border conflicts, trained across a dozen combat disciplines, and for the first 90 seconds of the live simulation he fought like it. It simply didn't matter. Dez adapted to every pattern in real time, the way water finds the shape of whatever container it's poured into, except the water had apparently done several tours overseas and knew exactly which pressure points made grown Centauri veterans reconsider their retirement plans. "Here's the thing about humans," Dez said conversationally, catching a strike meant for his throat and redirecting it with a small, almost gentle twist that sent Vrax stumbling into a holographic pillar. "We don't have claws. We don't have venom. We don't have exoskeletons. You're right about all of that. But we've spent about 200,000 years hunting things that had all 3, using nothing but sticks, teamwork, and an absolutely unreasonable refusal to accept that we were supposed to lose." He ducked a strike, answered it, and Vrax's weapon skittered across the deck plating. "I was special recon back on Earth," Dez continued, almost apologetically, like he was explaining a minor scheduling conflict rather than a professional death sentence. "Did 4 tours in places you've never heard of, against people who genuinely believed they had the advantage right up until they didn't. Command sent me here to learn how you people fight before revealing what we can actually do. Figured the best way to study your doctrine was to lose to it politely for a few weeks. You've been very generous with the data, by the way. Really appreciate it." Vrax, on the ground, weaponless, staring up at a species he had spent 4 years dismissing as an evolutionary rounding error, found himself experiencing an emotion he did not have a comfortable word for. It sat somewhere between fury and a profound, bone-deep respect, and it made his mandibles ache. "You were sandbagging," he said, disbelieving. "This entire time." Sandbagging is a very specific human sports term, but yes, essentially. "Also, respectfully, sir, you told me to stop holding back. That was a mistake. I did try to warn you. 3 separate times, on record, in front of witnesses, which I wanted noted for posterity." The simulation ended. The lights returned to their normal, unglamorous fluorescent hum. Thryllis was staring with her mandibles fully agape. Gorham, who had not shown a single flicker of emotion in 3 weeks of training, was grinning, an expression so foreign to his rocky features that it looked almost structurally unsafe. Islith had gone very quiet, her earlier smugness replaced with the particular silence of someone recalculating an entire worldview in real time. The 2 Voranic observers exchanged a glance that needed no translation. "Reclassify the human recruitment program," one of them said to the other, already keying something into a datapad. "Priority tier. Immediately." Command's reaction, once word spread, was swift and characteristically overblown. Emergency briefings were called. Strategic assessments were drafted. Someone in the Compact's Threat Analysis Division apparently had a minor breakdown upon reviewing the simulation footage and had to be given the rest of the shift off. Des, informed of all this later that evening, responded by eating an entire ration bar in 3 bites and shrugging. "Guess I should have mentioned it earlier," he said. But honestly, the look on his face was worth the wait. Vrax found him afterward on the observation deck, alone, staring out at the slow rotation of stars through the viewport. He approached with the stiff, deliberate posture of someone who very much did not want to be having this conversation but was going to have it anyway, because some things needed saying even when they tasted bad on the way out. "Why," Vrax said, without preamble, "would your species deliberately present itself as weak? It is inefficient. It is illogical. I nearly filed for your removal from my training deck." Des considered this for a moment, and for the first time in 3 weeks, the joke didn't come immediately. When he answered, his voice had lost some of its usual lightness. "Because every single time in our history somebody decided humans were the weak ones, too small, too soft, too disorganized, whatever the excuse was that week, it went badly for them. Really badly. We've been underestimated by bigger, stronger, better armed everything since we figured out how to throw rocks with intent. So somewhere along the way we learned that being underestimated isn't an insult. It's just free tactical advantage, if you're patient enough to let people keep making the mistake." Vrax was quiet for a long moment, processing this with the particular reluctance of a man realizing his entire professional worldview needed minor renovations. "That is," he said finally, "the single most irritating philosophy I have ever heard." "Yeah," Des agreed, grinning again, the joke fully back now that the honest part was over. "It works out great for us, though." Vrax made a sound that, in a Satari, roughly translated to a laugh he was actively trying to suppress and failing. "I am still filing a complaint," he said. "For emotional damages. Add it to the pile. I hear commands not reading them anymore." 3 months later, Vrax requested a transfer to a training post as far from human recruits as administratively possible, citing, in his official paperwork, professional exhaustion and a newfound appreciation for personal humility. The request was denied, on the grounds that Earth had just been formally proposed for full compact membership, human recruits were about to triple in number fleet-wide, and, according to the memo, Vrax was, infuriatingly, the single most qualified instructor left standing who had actually survived direct contact with one. Vrax read the memo twice, set it down, and allowed himself exactly one long, weary sigh before heading back to the training deck, where a fresh batch of humans was already waiting, grinning, and undoubtedly about to lose on purpose.